Hello, everybody. We have a special treat for you today on the Decision Masters podcast. I'm your host, Kirsten Parker, and today I'm not alone. I'm so excited for you to hear my interview with financial coach Christina Edel. Christina and I met at the beginning of 2025. I knew we needed to get her on the podcast to talk about financial decisions. And y'all, she did not disappoint. This is so good. Get ready to take some notes. You are going to love this interview. Don't forget to check the show notes for all of her links. And as a quick side note reminder, I officially have the Stop the Spiral workshop available on demand. This is the decision-making method for high-functioning overthinkers, the most accessible and usable tools that will make your next decisions tonight, tomorrow, this weekend easier. You'll make them faster. You'll know why you're making them. You got to get the Stop the Spiral workshop. You can get it now at kirstenparker.com/spiral. All right, let's get into the interview. Thanks so much for coming to hang out with me. Welcome to the Decision Masters podcast.
Thank you for having me.
We have so much to talk about. Christina and I met studying together in a program, but as we got to know who each other were in the program, I was like, this is a money expert. I need to know all the things. And I asked you to come on the podcast because there's often this special category of difficulty that's reserved for financial decisions in our lives. So I so appreciate you coming to help us with that.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm so thrilled to be here.
I love what you said when we were talking about what we could discuss on the interview. Nobody needs to deal with the stress and anxiety of winging it financially. I was like, so many people's hearts just felt heard because we do, right? We just wing it. We learn so many things in life. And then everyone's like, figure it out.
You know, when I came up with that language, it was because when I very first started my business, I would go to these like BNI or networking meetings. And I thought, I would start by saying, hi, I'm a financial coach. And I realized that people don't understand what that means. And I come from the coaching space. So to me, it's like, oh, financial coach, it's such an obvious thing. Like everybody that I talk to in the coaching space is well aware of what that means. So I would go to these areas where it's like I'm talking to lawyers and accountants and plumbers and whomever might be in the networking group. And I realized the one thing they all understood is feeling like they're winging it and not recognizing when they're being intentional with their decisions and when they're just kind of doing a spaghetti on the wall approach, which
Totally.
leads to a ton of stress. And so when I started to express it in that way, where it's like, okay, we're going to get away from the stress and anxiety of winging it with our finances, and we're going to make some clear decisions that are aligned with our values, man, people all of a sudden were like, oh, I get it now. I see what you do.
Yeah.
So it's been a nice choice of words.
Oh my gosh. Yes. And speaking of that, that's a perfect lead into why don't you explain what you do? Because I think we get financial coach here ish, but there's so many different ways you could do that. So tell us who you are and what you do.
Okay. So I guess I'll start by saying that I am a second career kind of person. So my first career was I worked in tech for a very long time. I got my MBA. I was climbing the corporate ladder in a Fortune 500 company. And I really thought that I was going to be a company girl for my whole life. And then a lot of really dramatic things happened in my life. We lost parents, we had children. And so as you're sort of dealing with these life or death situations, your priorities really become realigned and you start to understand what's genuinely important for you. As all of that was happening, I felt handcuffed to my old career. And I felt handcuffed because I was the primary income earner. And ultimately, I felt like we needed my income in order to sustain our lifestyle. And so it took me much longer than I care to admit, but I finally got to the point where I realized, holy smokes, money's the problem. If I didn't have to rely on this income, I could make different choices in my life. And that led to a 5-year journey of me learning as much as I possibly could in that space and then completely revamping our personal finances for my husband and I. And thank God he was on for the ride. Like he was like, yep, I agree with all of this. Let's do it. And so through that process, I just learned a tremendous amount. I went through the Dave Ramsey coaching program. That's, I think, kind of like an entry level to personal finance coaching for a lot of people. They hear about the Dave Ramsey show. So I was certified through his program, but ultimately what I realized is that while his baby steps are wonderful for those of you who know that language, it's a very keen process on how to clean up your finances. As I started to employ that with my own clients, I realized a couple things. One, there is no silver bullet, and the best approach is the one that your client will work with. So what I do is I coach the person. And what I mean by that is people come to me and explain to me what their problems are. Like maybe they're not making very much money and they're struggling to pay their bills. And so we navigate some tactics on how to handle the bills while building their income. But I get a lot of people who are making 100 to $300,000 a year and they're living paycheck to paycheck and they don't have any keen motivation to change their behavior other than the fact that it's leading to discord in their relationship. So
Yeah.
then we explore, all right, where is the discord coming from? Do you not know how to talk about money? Are you not on the same page? Are you making two different sets of decisions? So one person's walking toward, destination A and another toward destination B, and
Yeah.
therefore you're working against each other. And so my coaching, it's filled with information. I have all the info, but I really believe that most people can find that online. So it's
Mhm.
really about understanding who are you, what are your individual struggles, and why are you struggling with money? And so then we kind of work through both of those angles. Like, is it an information gap or is it a misalignment with what you really want?
Yes. I love that simplicity that can be so challenging to A plus students,
Yeah.
but it's so true that the best plan is the one you're going to follow. And we can be so convinced, and I think it's a great source of stuckness that we need to find the best perfect way to do something. And that's how 3 months goes by, 3 years go by, where we haven't done anything because we either all or nothing it. We're like, well, I can't actually do the perfect plan until all of these other situations are different and all these conditions are met. So can't do the plan. So I can't do anything. Or you start and stop because you picked the most out of alignment, difficult version of the plan for you. So you can only sustain it for like 4 days. And then you're like, well, I'm not going to do this anymore. So I love that. It's like, yes, you can find all the things on the internet, but what is going to actually work for you in a way that you will do it? Because it's the only way you will ever see any different results.
Yeah. Like with everything in life, the big change comes through consistency. And if you design a plan that you absolutely despise and
Yeah.
refuse to live with,
Hmm.
I always liken money to diet. I think this happens
Yeah.
with a lot of people. These are like the two things. We all want to be skinny and rich, it feels like. And so I always say to people that it's kind of like diet. Like you know all the right things to do, but you kind of
Yeah.
have to figure out how can you do that in a way that you'll be able to live with it forever. And
Yeah.
maybe forever, there's some dynamics in there. You could change the way your diet is. As you get older, you might find that alcohol no longer suits your body. So you make some shifts, or you might find that certain foods just cause you indigestion. So you tweak a little bit along the way, but ultimately you're finding a plan that is livable for the rest of your life. And I feel the same way about money. We
Yeah.
ultimately create a spending plan and a savings plan that will, be digestible to you for the rest of your life, knowing that there will be some shifts in priorities when you have life changes.
It's so true. That analogy is so helpful for so many people, I think. It's so relatable to think of the last time you just went through a period of your life where you were like not paying attention to what you ate because you're like, "Ugh, I either don't have the bandwidth for this or I don't care or I just want to like indulge, whatever." We do this same exact thing with spending, right? You can just go through a period where you're like, I don't know what I'm going to do. I'm going to spend whatever I want. I'm not going to pay attention to it. And then we go on these my friend was just telling me this. She's like, "I'm going on a spending freeze." And it's like, "Okay, I'm gonna go on a 10-day cleanse."
Yes.
But what pattern are you really setting up for your life? Is this the way you want to respond to these problems every quarter? Like, what intense thing are we gonna do to put a Band-Aid on something all the time? Or are we gonna think a little longer term and imagine, Do I really just wanna change the way I'm approaching all of this?"
Yeah.
So fun to see the overlap of the decision-making stuff that we talk about on this podcast and then bringing in your expertise because you talk about vision. And I don't know that anyone thinks, "Gotta get my money stuff in order," and then immediately thinks of vision. So tell us why it's important.
You bet. So, first off, I am a keen believer in a concept called prospections. This is like a fancy psychology word that I learned probably 10 years ago.
Mhm.
And the idea is that the reason you are the way you are today has more to do with who you want to be in the future and less to do with who you were in the past.
You guys, wait, confetti for that. Hold on. I need like, everybody put what you're doing down. Pause your
Oh, I
dog walk.
love your confetti. Your confetti is the best.
We need to hear this again. Tell us again.
Okay.
Everybody listen.
You are And it's kind of a mind bender when you really understand this. So frequently we tell ourselves, well, I am the way I am because of how I was raised, or because
Yes.
of this trauma that I experienced, or because of these challenges that I faced.
Yes. Everybody who has been listening, we talk about the vision here in terms of your self concept and creating your intentional self concept, defining yourself more by who you want to be. Okay, so we're all familiar with this. Okay, Christina, keep going.
Okay, so we have this shared understanding that this is the pattern that most of us identify with when we describe who we are. And the reality is that we are much more affected by who we want to be in the future. Now, the snag with all of this is that very often people don't have a big picture for who they want to be in the future. So, what's happening is, like when I start working with my clients, I will ask them, where do you want to be in 5 years? And I very frequently hear, well, I'd like to get a promotion. I'd like to have maybe a new car and maybe upgrade my house. It's very challenging for people to create a bigger picture for their lives. We often kind of set a default vision for the future that's just a little bit better than where we are today. And I
Yeah.
like to challenge that with my clients and say, no, 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 scrap where you are today. If you could create the life that you really want, what would that look like? Once you have that defined and really clear, and a fun exercise that I use to help people figure this out is, what would your life look like if you made $50,000 a month? Something about giving this concept a number can really help you understand, well, if I made $50,000 a month, I would work in this kind of a field. I would
Yeah.
focus on raising kids. I would never cook another meal. I'd hire a chef. You get really
Mm-hmm.
creative when you have some parameters over how to define that. So I like to ask people, think about it from your work perspective, your social perspective, your spiritual perspective, and then also your sort of like charitable giving perspective. So have a vision of who you want to be in these four main areas. And then give yourself some parameters. Maybe it's $10,000 a month. Maybe you're a big dreamer and you say $100,000 a month, but really frame up what this vision for the future is. Once you know that, it becomes so much easier to make financial decisions because will this decision I'm about to make get me closer or further to that vision I have for the future? You're coming to crossroads all the time. And as you come to a crossroads, you have to decide, do I make a right, a left? Do I go straight? When you know where you're headed, it's so much easier to make those calls.
Yes. I feel like so much of the work I do with people who want to stop overthinking so much or getting caught up in what other people think they should do or will think of their choices is helping them have these clear conversations with themselves about what do you want. And I
Mhm.
think that's such a useful exercise you gave us because we need help. We need help figure like how do I know what I want? How do I figure out what I want when I've been used to thinking a certain way? When I have the modeling I was giving and the conditioning by society I've given and the permissions that I have or haven't been given to want certain things. So it's so useful to think about what do you really want and not starting from what seems reasonable or what seems practical or not too selfish.
Yes. Yes. And I feel that conversation about feeling greedy, that comes up a lot for so many of my clients. And
Mhm.
it's so fascinating to me because there's a lot of people who like to think that we all get a piece of the pie. And I always remind people like there's not one pie though. You can always make another pie. Like the thing about human nature is that we're so creative, we're so innovative. There's no limit on what's possible. And so when we start to have those feelings of greediness, really what we're talking about is there's a sense of unworthiness. I don't deserve this. And who defines that? Like, is there a worthiness scale? It doesn't exist. So it's just one of those things that it's very difficult to convince yourself you're worthy because there's so many mental snafus wrapped up in that. It's much easier to say, I have a dream for the future and it looks like this, and I'm pursuing that dream. And I'm one of those people that I have a serious conviction in myself that as
Yes.
you are working toward a goal, people like they always talk about getting to a certain destination, but the truth is the journey to the destination is where the satisfaction comes from. It's the arriving,
Mhm.
it's the process of arriving.
Mhm.
And so I always tell people like even this exercise of creating a vision for your future, redo it every 5 years because by the time you get to the place where you said you want it to be, you're going to have a new destination you want to hit. You can be content in the journey, but when you get to the destination, you're going to want more. And that doesn't
Yeah.
make you greedy, that makes you human.
Yeah, like, life would be so boring if you just got somewhere and you were like, "I'm done now." No one's planning on that, so let's just
Right.
own that that's not the plan.
Yes, life should be an adventure.
The worthiness. Oh my gosh. I feel like this can be such a prickly area. And I don't know if you encounter this or not, but I feel like people can want their finances to be a cognitive only area, like no thoughts and feelings and habits and self worth here, please and thank you. And really normalizing that our self concept affects literally everything, how you show up in a room, what you are capable of seeing as possible. It affects so much. And then also, decisions are emotional. Even the most logical seeming decisions, they're emotion driven. So if we can just normalize, yeah, your worthiness is going to be a factor here. It doesn't have to be a therapy session. It doesn't have to be confronting in some kind of emotionally traumatic way. But I almost want to encourage people to take a sigh of relief. I don't know your thoughts on this, but like, yeah, you're a human. So money doesn't get to be off limits for the humaning part of being a human, right?
Yeah, absolutely agree with you. It's so fascinating because I have a lot of people that I work with who are afraid of, I guess I'll go back to the word greedy, but it's bigger than that. It's because greedy is kind of has like a petty vibe to it. It's almost like they're afraid of letting their money define them or
Mm,
feeling like their money is, it goes back to that old saying, like, money is the root of all evil. So I don't want to have too much. I don't want to be too gloaty. I don't want to be too grandiose. I don't want to be uppity, like, however you want to phrase it.
yeah.
There is some of that happens. And so there's this really bizarre sort of cognitive dissonance that happens where you hold sort of two beliefs at the same time.
Yeah.
So one of the things that I see very frequently with my clients is they're very successful in their business or in their career and simultaneously not at all managing their money well. So they're drowning in debt. They're actually worried about maybe if anything happens, if they have any hiccups to their paychecks, they could lose the house. There's a lot of this going on and it's very upsetting to them because they think, how can I be so successful in this part of my life and
Yeah.
so unsuccessful or so chaotic in this part of my life? And the reason for that is because of emotions. Like you have
Yeah.
something that is just messing with you on an emotional level with your money. And again, it's always a fine line to walk when you're coaching people because part of our jobs as coaches, I think, is to help people see the problematic thoughts. And oftentimes, the way that you can best identify the thought is by exploring the emotions. And
Hmm.
so when that happens, it's very frequently like, okay, I can tell you're getting worked up here. I can tell you're
Yeah.
getting very angry, for example, about how something went off plan with your spending, with your budget, let's say. And then you come to find out that it has to do with there's fear tied to the purchases that were made, or there's a lack of trust with the spouse. And so money is emotional, and to think
Yeah.
that it's not in some way a mirror of your emotional well-being would be, I think, like putting your head in the sand. You have to actually be willing to
Yeah.
look at those hard feelings. I mean, that's the genuine work. Every coach that worked with anybody or anybody who's been to therapy knows that is the real work of personal development is facing those sort of dark areas, whether it be in your diet or your finances or your career, and then being willing to say, okay, this is what's happening. This is how
Yeah.
I feel about it. This is where I want to be or how I want it to feel. And then recognize whatever lie you're believing in that. And then
Yeah.
bring light to it, like
Yeah.
shine a light on it and then just choose where do you want to go next?
Yeah, it goes back to like the food analogy, right? Everyone has different needs and different biologies and things, but we know the basics. If you only eat
Yeah.
croissants and goldfish, like we know what's going to happen. But does that stop food from being complicated for everybody just because they know better? No. So permission for it to be messy and then just solve the actual problem. And I think the greediness thing is a really good tie into the next part of this whole tapestry that you work with people on, which is the values. Because I hear this
Mhm.
a lot too from people who want to make decisions and they often approach it with negative phrasing, like you're using, I don't want to be greedy. I don't want money to define me. And I hear that a lot too with people who want to take control of their choices. They're coming at it from this angle of, well, what I don't want is to be selfish.
Yeah.
And I think pinpointing the values is so useful to not live your life focused on what you don't want. Because, yeah, who wants to be selfish? Like, whose goal is that?
Yeah.
Nobody listening to this podcast or watching your YouTube channel. What do you want, though? So, if you don't want to be greedy, if you
Yeah.
don't want money to define you, let's actually switch into what matters. So you can define your own metrics here. Like, according to your values and what matters to you, is what you're doing greedy? Does it meet your criteria of greedy? If it does, super useful to know. Do something differently. Let's put you in charge of what's greedy or not, so you don't feel like the greedy police are going to come get you at some point.
Yeah, exactly. So, as you were saying that, I had a couple of thoughts. The first thought I had was, again, and I had not really considered this before, but just like food and money, both of these together are two things you're never going to be able to get rid of.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, you have to eat to survive and you have to have money to survive. So, yes, if we lived in a
Yeah.
utopian, we could all, live in a giant commune and just barter for everything and then money wouldn't be a problem. But because of the society and the world that we live in, money is required. You must
Yeah.
learn how to navigate hard financial conversations and have a plan for your finances in the future because it's just part of how the game of life is played for us today in this era. The other thing, and I really love that you talked about a lot of people focus on what they don't want instead of focusing on what they do want. And I will tell you that some of the most, well, they're kind of like I can do this with a sense of humor now. And so I always highlight to people like there is zero judgment from me whenever we're having financial conversations. But very frequently, I will have a conversation and say to somebody, "What do you want with your money?" And they're like, "Well, I don't want to be broke. I don't want to live in my car.
Yeah.
I don't want to lose my house. I don't." And it's very challenging when people are in that mindset to convert them into saying what they do want. But I
Mhm.
will toe the line with a person and have like it could be 40 minutes before I get them to actually proclaim a want because they've
Mhm.
trained themselves so sincerely on what they don't want. An exercise that like you're talking about making this transition into speaking of our values, that is a really great way to start to identify what you do want. And so I have an exercise that I share with my clients where I will create a list of a number of values that could be things like I care about education, I care about nutrition, I care about adventure, I care about family. But the list is long. Maybe there's 40 or 50 items on there.
Yeah.
And what I have people do is I have them first go ahead and circle like every single thing that is
Yeah.
meaningful to them on the list.
Yeah.
And then after that, you go through again, you're like, okay, now that you know the list of the ones that are meaningful to you, let's highlight the top 10. And then from that, where it's like, okay, now let's star the top five of that. And that list of five is the five that you must work into your budget somehow. So
Mm.
what happens is very frequently, let's use the example of somebody comes to me and they want to pay off their debt. They want to go very hard and say, I'm just going to have zero spending, no eating out. We're going to completely lock down and it's going to take us a year and a half to pay off this debt. And we're
Yes.
going for it hard like a sprint. And
Crash diet.
yes, exactly. That's exactly right. It's like the master cleanse. Like, I'm not going to eat anything, but I'm going to drink this lemonade mixture for the next
My
10 days.
cayenne lemon water,
Exactly.
no spending.
And by the way, I'm totally a culprit of this. So I say and I laugh at this from the place of knowing it both from
Oh,
the diet framework and from the money framework of like, I'm
totally.
gonna go hard.
Yeah.
But what happens is there are certain values that you just it's like as though if you don't recognize and honor these values in the way that you spend money, you're going to fall off the wagon. It might be in a couple of weeks, it might be in a couple of months, but you're going to fall off because the values are so core to your desire for how you display yourself in the world. So,
Yeah.
for example, I had a client a while back, they had a significant amount of debt. They decided they were going to stop eating out. Sometimes you have to let people make these hard decisions or suffer a little bit to come to the decision on their own, but they were adamant they wanted to go hard and just focus on paying off debt, but they started falling off and blowing off their budget after just a month and a half. And I
Uh-huh.
highlighted to them after we had done the values exercise that they really genuinely care about social ties and they cared a lot about adventure. But one of the ways that they like to experience adventure was by trying out new restaurants. And they
Mm.
frequently did that with friends. So by cutting out their eating out budget, they essentially made it where they were socializing to the degree that they wanted and they had cut out
Yeah.
all adventure from that foodie level that they enjoyed it. And
Yeah.
we ended up agreeing, okay, you know what? It's going to take a little longer to pay off your debt, but let's work that back in so that you don't eventually just throw the whole budget out the window and then eat out, every day for a month and a half and put yourself in a worse position than you were to begin with. It could be family adventure. It could be like taking weekend getaways. It could be if one of your items is status, it could be having a new leased car every 3 years or getting your luxury handbag. It doesn't really matter what it is. You just have to understand and recognize what the values are and honor that in your budget to some degree.
Okay, wait a minute though, because Christina, it sounds like you are telling us that there isn't a one correct right way to act when you want to beef up your savings or pay down your debt. And you don't actually have to like deny everything about who you are and make it wrong. And I'm confused now. Like you can actually just be a little bit more yourself and still accomplish your financial goals. That's crazy talk.
You know, it feels like that when you are in that very black and white way of thinking, like I'm either doing it right or I'm doing it wrong. And what I like to remind people is that we live in the world of gray. Like there's so many
Mm,
different hues. So I do always encourage people, first and foremost, have a vision. Where do you want to be? And
yeah.
maybe the vision includes certain elements that will ultimately produce for you your individual goals. Honor your values. And then the last part of it is really just recognize what the primary goal is right now. So debt repayment is such an
Yes.
easy one to talk about. So I always tell people when you think about debt repayment, so many of us, savings, this happens too. We pay a little extra on this debt and a little extra on that debt and a little extra on that debt. Or maybe when we're trying to build savings, we squirrel a little bit away in this brokerage account. And then we have our 401k and then we have an emergency savings. And so I tell people, like, if your goal right now is to pay off debt, don't pay a little extra on all of them. Pick the one you're targeting, make that your top goal, and focus on that. Honor the budget. You still have your values. You're still letting yourself eat out once a week or whatever it ends up being that is appropriate to give you the lifestyle that you can sustain. But then
Hmm.
when you have that excess cash, you apply it to the dominant goal that you're focusing on right now. And then when that one's wiped out, you reevaluate. All right, am I paying
Yeah.
off another debt? Am I focusing on building up my emergency fund? So choose a specific goal and then target that. Maybe it takes you 1 month, maybe it takes you 2 months, then reevaluate what's the next goal. But
Yeah.
always, as you're targeting that goal, you still have to honor who you are as a person.
Yes. And I think there can be a lot of resistance to picking one thing because on the surface, we do genuinely believe everything's important, though. I'm already behind. I shouldn't have these problems I have, whatever they are. So I can't ignore some of them to focus on one. And I think a challenging thing for people to hear, myself included, because we're all human here, but that's really just an excuse to not change what you're doing and how you're thinking. It's really an excuse to say, well, it's going to take 5 years to solve all these problems. And it will be irresponsible to prioritize one at a time because what am I going to do? Just like neglect this thing over here. Very dramatic. Our brains, when they get in their all or nothing
Yeah.
thinking, they exaggerate. And by excuse, we're not judging. We're like, this is you protecting yourself from the unfamiliar. Change is hard and scary,
Yeah.
but it is an excuse. And sometimes I feel like we need to hear that. Oh, I am making an excuse. Like we need to help ourselves get fired up to really
Yeah.
motivate ourselves to take some kind of different action. Like, okay,
Yes.
no more excuses.
The irony about that is when you choose one specific goal and you hit that goal, that is actually more motivating and more inspiring to choose the next goal. And so,
Let's get a win.
yes, the language that I say to my clients all the time, and literally, I must say this at least once a week, and that is you can have it all, you just can't have it all at once.
Yeah.
So choose the most important thing right now. Another phrase that comes up often is it's okay to want it and not have it. Yet.
Yes.
I like to stick a yet on there depending on what we're talking about,
Yeah,
but
yeah, yeah.
hey, to
I
want
like
that really beautiful designer item, that's my thing. If you haven't guessed yet, I love designer handbags. It's okay to want a designer handbag and not get it yet. It's okay to wait. We have a really significant problem, I think, in our society about instant gratification. And so it's like,
mm,
if I can't pay it all off right now, then I'm just not gonna, I just am not gonna do it. And it's like, no, 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 no. It's okay.
yeah,
It's okay to let this other stuff sit over here because you're focusing on this.
yeah.
It's okay to want to fix all of that and decide that it's not the right time yet.
Yeah. Well, that's back to the vision, right? Some of the language we use on the podcast here is making decisions in advance or setting up decision
Yeah.
filters. All this stuff you can do to make the in the moment daily decisions easier and not just easier to make, like an instant gratification decision is very easy to make, but easier to make in a way that you like it and
Yeah.
it serves you and it's aligned for what you've decided you want and matters in your life If you bother to come up with this vision of who do I want to be? How do I want to see myself? How do I want to be acting? It makes it easier for you on a Tuesday to be like, oh, I see the opportunity to make this decision right now. And not like I don't want the thing, but I'm going to stick to the decision I already made, or I'm going to
Yeah.
reference the decision I already made about what matters.
Yeah, and it's really empowering. You don't feel so much like you're being blown around by the wind, like you're firm in your commitments, you're firm in your resolve, you're
Yeah.
firm in becoming the person you want to be. And that is,
Yeah.
I mean, it might be hard in the moment, but when you look back on it, you're going to get rid of buyer's remorse. I mean, that's something that I see all the time with people. It's like, oh, I bought this thing because I'll tell you, this is actually really funny. I have a good friend, and she would often say to me, before I tell you what I spent, let me tell you what I saved.
Oh,
And the reason she would say that is because she had the worst time passing up a good sale. And I'm like, yes, but buying the thing you didn't want just because it's on sale is still buying the thing you didn't want. And she's like, but I wanted it when I saw the price. And I'm like, oh my gosh, I love you for being so honest about it. And there is some of that where it's the thrill of the hunt, but I always try to
yeah.
encourage people like, buy less, buy better, buy aligned.
Well, okay, speaking of that, you do have some questions that you give people to help them in these
Yes,
moments of
yes,
instant gratification.
yes.
Can we have the questions?
Yes. I actually have them up on my other monitor. So I'm going to look over.
Get a pen, y'all. This is gonna change
Yes.
your life.
So whenever people are looking to buy something, and this can be for big ticket items like, hey, I'm really thinking about buying a boat, or this could be for smaller items like, I'm going to Lululemon for the fourth time this month. These are
Mm,
some questions for you to ask yourself.
okay.
First, is it necessary? And what I mean by that is, do I genuinely need it? Or do I already have something like it in my closet? So, another tactic that I offer to a lot of my clients is shop your closet first, especially for my ladies that love to always keep on top of the fashion trends. I do find we tend to gravitate once you get to a certain age, and I'm in my 40s, so I can say this with total experience. If you go into my closet, you will see a slew of things in the same cuts and the same colors because I know it looks good on me and I
Yeah.
will buy the same things over and over again. So I tend
Yeah.
to ask people, is it necessary? Did you shop your closet? Do you already have it?
Yeah.
And very often you'll find that you do.
Mhm.
So
Yeah, that one hurts. That one hurt me. Is this
yes,
necessary? But
yeah,
good.
that gets all of us. So is it necessary? Does it align with your values? So again, you have to go through the values exercise. You have to have a
Yeah.
sense of what your values are in order to properly answer that. Will it last? Is it something that is going to keep?
Mhm.
Is it the best purchase that I can make? This one ultimately means like shopping around. So, another one of my spending patterns is I love online courses. I am such a personal development junkie.
Yeah.
No, because I spend so much on a course, I will wait for Memorial Day sales or Black Friday sales, especially if you're looking to buy a more expensive item, maybe an appliance for your home
Mhm.
or a really great Burberry trench, let's say. If that's the kind of stuff you're buying, then do you need to have it right now? Will it last a long time? And is it the right time to purchase this thing? Because you might be able to get it on a great sale at some point in the near future, especially if it's a timeless item or an item that's meant to last a long time. Hand in hand with that, does it cost a lot to upkeep? So
Mm.
this one, my husband and I almost bought
That's
a
for the
boat a
boat.
while back, and I'll
Yeah.
tell you what, the price of the boat didn't intimidate me, but what did intimidate me was the storage, the annual maintenance, the insurance costs. So again, does it cost a lot to upkeep? And then lastly, will it depreciate quickly?
Mm.
Which this one's a little bit more of a loaded question for somebody who's looking for those larger transactions.
Yeah.
It's something to think about. Like, is it going to retain its value? I find very frequently, especially again, professed bag hag here, but how many times have I bought myself like a Louis Vuitton and thought to myself, well, it's an investment? Like, that's a lie that I'm telling myself. The truth is, I might still be able to get some money out of it later if I want to sell it because I don't hang on to these forever. I
Yeah.
will love them for a while and then I will sell them.
Yeah.
So this is it going to actually hold its value or not? And I think so often we'll tell ourselves that something's an investment. I'm saying that in air quotes,
Yeah.
but really it's not an investment. And you should have that honest question for yourself. And then the
Yeah.
final question is, do I already have something that meets this need?
And it's not because the right answer is, well, if you already have something, you shouldn't buy it. There are no finance
Yeah.
police, it's just like the greed police. But it does help you feel more in charge of your financial decisions if you know You've thought things through the way you want to think things through. You've considered
Yeah.
the things you want to consider. It's all about this ownership. And I feel like you can only end up in a better financial position if you feel like you've taken more charge of your choices.
Yeah.
Right.
So having said that, I'll offer one other tactic that I offer to some of my clients. I have several clients that will do online shopping as a method of self-soothing, right? So things
Mm-hmm.
are hard, life is hard, work is hard, everything's hard. I know what will make me feel better. I'm going to go browse, my favorite shopping online locations.
Yeah.
Sometimes you don't even want to go through all the questions. So what I'll offer to them is put it in your cart. You can add as much to your cart as you want,
Yeah.
but you can't actually click purchase for 72 hours.
Yeah.
And what's really fascinating about it is a lot of times the things you've put in your cart, it was more the fun of finding it. 24 hours, 72 hours later, you're like, I don't even want it anymore. It was just fun to think about owning it.
Yeah. You have the fun of finding, and then the next day you look at your cart total and you're like, well, if somebody handed me $470 right now, I'd be super happy. Like, oh, wait,
Yeah.
I think I'd rather keep my money.
Yeah, legit. Like it legit works for a lot of people to take that
Yes.
approach because you get that sort of fun, that instant gratification of imagining that you owned it, but then you don't actually buy it.
Yeah. And you don't have more stuff in your house, creating
Yeah.
all of your clutter and more stuff to store and just problem. Oh my gosh. This is so helpful, I think, in so many ways. The deep undercurrents of how are you actually going to change these habits and the daily surface level. Okay, but here's also something to help you
Yes.
in the next hour when you go to the store next. It's so invaluable. Thank you so much. Tell us everything about where we can find you, follow you, get more from you, work with you.
I'll keep it real simple. So I have a website. It's ChristinaEdel.com. It's ChristinaEdel.com. And then I have that same name for my YouTube channel. And really, YouTube is where I put all of my content. And then a lot of the items that I spoke about. So, this idea of having a plan, having a vision for where you want to be, understanding your values. I have a workbook that people can go to my website and find, or they can go to my YouTube channel and find. And it's just a way for you to kind of read through it, learn a little bit more about me, but mostly have those exercises at your disposal.
We're going to link all of that in the show notes. You guys go binge the YouTube. Thank you so much for your wisdom and your time.
Again, thank you for having me. You're so much fun to speak with. Like, you're such a joy.
Oh, thanks. Well, I'm going to go get your workbook literally right now. And thank you so much for being here. It was great talking to you. Hey, want to find out your decision style? Obviously, go take the decision style quiz. It's in the show notes and at kirstenparker.com/quiz. We all have our style when it comes to making decisions, but do you know how to use your default way of thinking to your advantage? Or do you mainly get stuck in the most annoying parts of overthinking and people pleasing? The decision style quiz has your answers, my friend. Take it right now at kirstenparker.com/quiz.